we finally just become a family. And I mean that in the sense of being more than just a band.
I'm gonna be in a band, a punk rock band, and Bad Religion's just a good influence. To me, they're like the best punk rock band ever.
We've always tried to feel that you're safe in this band to do what you want and say what you want and play what you want, and no one's going to judge you.
If Bad Religion didn't exist, my songwriting style wouldn't be the way it is. Rise Against probably wouldn't sound the way it does. I owe them a lot.
I grew up, 14, you see your first Bad Religion logo, the cross, you're like, oh, what's that, and you started getting involved, and then you get the first record, and then you realize that there's these words that you have no idea what they mean, and then you start looking it up and you research, and you're like, wow, that's what I've been trying to say all the time, and these guys are actually saying it. It gives you a little bit more of a grasp of reality when you want to express your ideas, that it's okay to go ahead, because, somebody else has been waving the flag for you a lot of times, and it just kind of breaks in the idea that, you're not in this alone and there's other people out there fighting the same battles you are.
So you're the first one in line, kind of a hardcore fan. What time did you get here today?
I got here at 11:30 a.m.
I lost my tooth in Bad Religion last year, and it's still gone.
Ninth time seeing you guys tonight. Ninth fucking time.
He's the ultimate Bad Religion lover.
This band got me more interested in a lot of things in the world and how things go on, and just made me question a lot of the things I believe about the world, about myself, about religion, and all of this. So I definitely attribute this band to being the way I think a lot.
I gotta get a new tooth, but Bad Religion is awesome.
This song goes out to all the hopeless sinners with grave allegiance and so meaningless in pain. The walking wounded in a pageant of contenders, no balance on a rail of pain for just a fan of rain. And everything is dealing me, blood relations and bricks. My expression, my confession, add it up, extract the lesson more than this. Once again, like a bullet, as a friend, tell me, can that be all there in here? In my rectory of doubt, I feel to pray like one devout. In time, the great, great dreamless sleep of a useless modern God. He rose away in starry days. Wretched atoms with hell to pay. A pen upon a pail of rain for just a little rain. And everything is dealing me, but relations and bricks. My expression, my confession, add it up, extract the lesson more than this. Once again, like a bullet as a friend, tell me, can that be all there is? Well, there's an endless disposition, and it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. There's space for a paper airplane race in the eye of a hurricane. And if pigs can fly, then surely so could I. But this pedestrian knows better than to even try. My ability is caught between the colors of a butterfly. And everything is dealing me, blood relations and bricks. My expression, my confession, add it up, extract the lesson more than this. Once again, like a bullet, as a friend, tell me, can that be all there is? All there is.
When I first met the other guys in the band, it was at El Camino High School. We all went to the same high school.
Well, there was a great friend of mine named Tom Clement who was also an outcast. He was one of the key figures in the evolution of Bad Religion because he was a very good friend with Brett Gurwitz.
He introduced me to Jay and Greg. He said, hey, you guys should be in a band together, because I played guitar and Greg sang, supposedly. We hadn't heard him yet.
Brett and I met the first time when Brett borrowed his dad's station wagon to go to a Ramones concert. He drove us to the Hollywood Palladium, and he asked me, dude, are you ready for a nonstop bop? And I said, you're goddamn right. And then I guess history was made.
I met Greg Graffin actually in junior high school. I didn't really become friends with him until we were at El Camino High School. We both showed up one day with spiky black hair, and he had a shirt that said Black Flag, and I had a shirt that said Virgin.
What we had in common was that they were the only punk rockers in the school.
So we kind of just stuck to each other like Velcro and said, yeah, I think we've got to stick together because we're going to get killed.
Jay didn't play anything, but it was pretty much agreed that we could teach him bass.
Control the seed of proliferation, but it's guided Belbad into an inharmonic home, to an inharmonic home. Consciousness has plagued us, we cannot shake it. Though you think you're in control, though you think you're in control. What does that proceed us in life? Our testament of our helplessness. There's no vestige of a beginning, no prospect of an end. When we all disintegrate, it'll all happen again, yeah. Time is so outside the minds of hordes, but they can explain what inches of the way, explain what inches of the way. History and future uncomers, but curiosity, but here we are, rooted in the present day, rooted in the present day. But today we'll see just in light. Our testament of our helpless night. There's no message or beginning, no prospect of an end. When we all disintegrate, it'll all happen again. Yeah, if you cannot conquer, you begin for a day. But you do it and do it and quickly fade away. And believe these words you hear when you think your path is clear. We have no control. We have no control. You have no control. You do not understand. We have no control. We are not in command. You have no control. We have no control. No control. No control. You have no control. Well, am I making haste or could it be haste that's making me? One time I think to kill or keep on fire, lose or living. I gotta go faster, keep up the pace, just to stay in the human race. I could go supersonic, the problem's chronic. Tell me, does life exist beyond it? When need to say, I just accelerate into oblivion. Into oblivion. Well, here I go again, everything is alien. How does it feel to be absent but amazed of cultural change? My deeds are senseless and rendered meaningless. When measured in advance, I could go supersonic. The problem's chronic. Tell me, does life exist beyond it? When even say, I just accelerate into oblivion. I won't lie, it's exciting when I try to decide things. I just wanna live decently, meaningfully. I'm in misery. I could go supersonic, the problem's chronic. Tell me, does life exist beyond it? When need to say, I just accelerate into oblivion. Into oblivion. Thank you very much.
My favorite band member? Oh, of course it's Greg. I mean, come on, he's a genius.
The things he writes about are like actually have like inquisitive thought behind them, but not just that. Like you can tell in like the words he writes that he's not some dipshit.
Greg's an inspiration all around, not just in music.
I like a lot of Brett's songs. He writes a certain melodical line that I really tend to hone in on.
And seeing Hetson's always great. I mean, Greg, been tearing it up over 20 years, with Circle Jerks and the Bad Religion. That guy's so full of energy, and he's just a class act to begin with. And just seeing him for an hour and a half straight is just, it's one of the best punk guitarists of all time. That guy is so underrated.
I like Jay myself, because I'm a bass player. He's my inspiration.
Brian Baker, who is just a historic figure in punk rock, and just like talking to him, you're like, whoa, you played a Minor Threat, like, oh, that's amazing, and Hetson and the Circle Jerks, and everybody in the band, even Brooks, Suicidal Tendencies and his history, it's just, and Jay's obviously the most personable of all of them. He's kind of like the spokesperson for those guys. He's always out hanging out with fans and friends, just always there. All those guys are just incredible.
Greg is a master of lyrics.
The lyrics are unlike any other band I've ever seen.
I'd say like the political statements he makes, the state of government.
He isn't like punk as fuck. He doesn't like, he's not like hardcore with a big mohawk or anything. He just does his own thing, and he's been doing it for a long time. And it kind of made me realize I don't have to like have the big leather jacket and everything. Just like be myself more.
So great to be back here in Hollywood, in the land where Bad Religion was born, or at least we wanted to be born. Factually, of course, we came from over the hill in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, we're in 818.
We were from the Valley. And if you were from OC, it was kind of cool. If you were from Hollywood, it was cool. But if you were from the Valley, it was like, oh, you're from the Valley.
I was such a nerd that I didn't even draw a distinction between Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley, because I saw the cool people in the Valley, the surfers and the skaters, And I couldn't even distinguish that they were seen as geeks because they lived in the valley by the people who were living in Marina del Rey. To me, they were all the same, and I was not part of that. I was just seen as a nerd. To be a band from the valley was second-tier status to the bands in Hollywood.
I remember that Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks one time introduced us as a really good new band from the valley. You know, that was his disclaimer.
We did start to build up a following, mostly because Jay and I hung out so much in Hollywood that we did start to get a Hollywood following very early on. By 1981, a lot of our best friends were just punks from Hollywood, and they started coming to our shows, legitimizing our fan base as being, you know, Hollywood-based.
Well, tonight we're going to give you a little bit of the old, a little bit of the new, and a little bit of the in-between. And we are so lucky because tonight you all can join us in making our first North American live DVD ever right here at the Palladium. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my left-hand man, Mr. Greg Hetson. Song's called Social Suicide. Right now, well, it's finally time to face my fears. Gonna get the hell out of here and create a pressure atmosphere. But the consequence is clear. There's a furnace set on high and the yearning undefined. But it's time to turn the tide walk around the miles abandoned in the haze. More a question than a curse. How could hell be any worse? The flames are stunning, the cameras running, so take warning. When the hills of Los Angeles are burning, palm trees are candles in the murder wind. So many lives are on a breeze, even the stars are at ease, and Los Angeles is burning. It's burning down.
Do you have a favorite Bad Religion song?
Along the Way.
Epiphany.
Yeah, that's a really good song.
I'd have to say Against the Grain, because you got to live against the grain. If you're an underdog, you swim against the stream all your life.
Do what you want.
He likes the guitar from Epiphany, but I like the lyrics of it, and also from Sorrow, the lyrics are really sweet in that song as well.
I Want to Conquer the World.
American Jesus,
yeah. For me, probably Generator.
You, which was just, I just liked it. It just turned me on to them as in general.
I like their slower stuff for some reason, like Struck a Nerve and The Answer.
Let Them Eat War. I like that one.
21st Century Digital Boy is a good one.
I like American Jesus. Probably I Want to Conquer the World.
Oh man, there's so many. How can you choose a favorite song?
Part 3.
I'm 13.
13?
Yeah.
How old are you?
44. I turned around to Bad Religion. They stole all of my discs from the mid-80s. Both of my kids love them now.
What's your favorite song?
Oh gosh, too many to know. What was that one we're playing on the way over here?
Generator?
Generator.
I've got nothing to say, I've got nothing to do. All of my neurons are functioning fluidly, but still I'm a cyber just like you. I'm one with my own mind of things, my planet supports only me. I've got one small problem, will I live forever? I've got just a short time to see. A modern man, evolutionary betrayer, modern man, ecosystem destroyer, modern man, destroys the chain, modern man, pathetic example of this organic heritage. But when I look back and think, when I ponder and ask why, I see my incessant man with careless abandon, consuming eternal supply. A modern man, evolutionary betrayer, modern man, ecosystem destroyer, modern man, destroys our chain, modern man, pathetic example of his organic heritage. Just a sample of carbon based wasted, just a fucking tragic epic of you and I. Modern man. It's a matter of prescience. No, not the science fiction kind. It's all about ignorance and greed and miracles for the blind. The media paraded disjointed politics, founded on petrochemical plunder and urine hostages. And instead of reason, we're in the game. The rules may be elusive, but our pieces are the same. And you know one more down, we all go down well. The balance is precarious, as anyone can tell. This world's going to hell. Don't allow this mythological momentum to exact its pride. Kyoto now, we can't do nothing and think someone else will make it right. You might not think it matters now, but why I feel wrong? Might not think there's any wisdom in a fucked up punk rock song. But the way it is, and numbers is blown. A brutal sun is rising on a sick horizon. It's in the way we live our lives, exactly like the double edge of a cool million eyes. And supremacy was heavy on the day. It's never really what you own, it's what you threw away. And how much did you pay? Don't allow this mythological momentum to exact its pride. Kyoto now, we can't do nothing and think someone else will make it right. In your dream, you saw a steady state of melody for eternity. Silent scream, but now the wisdom that's a thing that's a tip for retreat. Let's go. Don't allow this mythological momentum isn't worth our risk. Kyoto now, we can't have vision for the future if it can't be fixed. Elio, we need a fresh and new religion to run our lives. Hand in hand, the errant armor of an engine will be our demise. Oh, Kyoto now.
All right. You know, who would have thought a bunch of young punks from Canoga Park would ever make it to the Palladium stage? You know, sometimes truth is really stranger than fiction.
A people shop, get by its back, and the children are hoping for a heart attack. Tonight the winners are watching, streets all conspire, and the lamppost can't stop crying. If I could fly, I'm on the world, won't see much limit odds, spell with stupidity. What I see humming, I'm a homicide, nothing brother suicide, then ollie up to breathe, who pick a side and high. The one is scratching at my door, the morning papers got the score. The human interest stories and the obituary. Oh yeah, cockroach deaths, rattling traps. How many devils can there put a match? Curiosity kills a Kerouac cat. Sometimes truth is straighter than fiction. In my alley round the corner, there's one with feather shoulders and a spirit giving head for drunk who'll never want it back. There's a little kid and his family eating crackers like Thanksgiving, and a big old wild desperado's going for a living. The one is scratching at my door. The morning papers got the score. The human interest stories and the obituary. Oh yeah, cradle for a cat, wolf looks back. How many devils can you fit up on a match? I wanna know why Hemingway cracked. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Life is the shittiest book I ever read. There isn't a hook, just a lot of cheap shots into the shop. The characters and image will never be. Oh,
The first time we ever rehearsed was in our original drummer Jay Ziskraut's mom's living room, because we were all in high school at this time.
We would bounce around from house to house until whose ever parents got tired of us being there.
Jay wasn't in the band yet. Greg was 15, and me and Ziskraut were 17. We didn't have a bass player yet. And I brought this song called Sensory Overload, and Greg brought a song called World War III, which ended up being on the EP. And we learned them and played them. And it's been basically, that's been the paradigm until today.
How we decided on the name Bad Religion.
We didn't go very long without a name. I think, we were had a few rehearsals.
Well, there were really like 6 or 7 others, and they were so horrifyingly bad. I'm glad we didn't choose them.
Head cheese, that got thrown out.
They were absolutely disgusting. I won't even repeat them.
If you're gonna call it head cheese, you might as well call it smegma. That's even more punk.
A big new thing that was happening was televangelists. Jerry Falwell was just coming into prominence. Another guy, Swaggart, was coming into prominence at that time.
Well, then we rambled on about a whole series of names that started with bad.
Bad family planning.
Bad family life.
I can't tell you why this made a negative impression on us, or a strong negative impression on us when we were just, young teenagers. Maybe it's because Greg and I are both science geeks. But we just thought these guys were complete jerks. We kind of considered ourselves to be progressives when we were even at such a young age. And we understood implicitly that morality is not something that in a free society is forced upon somebody.
Someone said it and it kind of came and went, but it kept coming back.
We named our band Bad Religion after this kind of incipient movement of evangelical Christians who had ministries on television, basically saying, fuck off Jerry Falwell.
We all nodded our head in agreement. Yeah, that's a good name. Fuck religion.
On one level, it's vindicating that we named our band that, but it's also really kind of frightening to look at the implications.
It literally was just 2 words put together that came to a meaning much later.
And now here we are, 20-something years later, and it turns out that the thing we were railing against as little baby kids was the seeds of this conservative right-wing groundswell that ended up in preemptive war and George Bush being re-elected behind an illegal war on foreign soil.
It felt like it was offensive enough to mean something, and that worked. This is really going to piss our parents off.
It means as much or more to me today than it did when we named the group.
There's an old man on a city bus holding a candy cane, and it isn't even Christmas. He seems to notice the obituary that his last friend has died. There's an infant clinging to his overweight mother in the cold. They go to shop for cigarettes, and she spent her last dollar on a bottle of vodka for tonight. And I guess it struck a nerve, like I had to split my eyes. You could never get out of line of sight, like a barren winter day, or a patch of unburned green, like a tragic real dream. I guess it struck a nerve. Every day I wonder in negative disposition, I'm abiding by superlatives, realizing very well that I am not alone. In Japan I look to tomorrow for salvation, but I'm thinking altruistically, and the wave of overwhelming doubt turns me to stone. To stone, and I guess it's struck a nerve, sent a murmur through my heart. We just haven't got time to crack the maze.
hand to squint my eyes. You can never get out of line of sight. Like a magic speeding clock or a cancer in our cells, a collision in the dark. I guess it's struck a nerve. It's struck a nerve. Struck a nerve. Fire. There's a puppet on a mountain and he's making up dinner with both a vision and a riding crop. Anybody can feel like a winner when it's served up piping hot. But you people aren't looking for a handout. You're America's working core. Can this be what they bargained for? Let them eat war. Let them eat war. That's how to ration the poor. Let them eat war. Let them eat war. There's an urgent need to feed declining pride. From the bus to the union shop, the war economy is making new jobs. But the people who benefit most are breaking bread with that benevolent hope. He never stole from the rich to give to the poor. All he ever gave to them was a war and a foreign enemy to deplore. Let them eat war. Let them eat war. That's how to ration the poor. Let them eat war. Let them eat war. There's an urgent need to feed declining pride.
You got to kill them and eat them before they reach for their checks. Squeeze some blue cows, make them bleed from their necks. Seize a few dollars from the people who sweat. There's freedom and debt, and they won't question it. From the jobs like the bosses, godlike condition. Workhorses park at a stoplight. Seasoned vets with their feet in nets. The stones throw away from a rock fight.
But not the 9 feet of death. Coming on the ration. They're the finest in the nation. When there's nothing left to feed them with, it's greater or it's death. Let them eat war. Let them eat war. That's how to ration the poor. Let them eat war. Let them eat war. There's an urgent need to feed declining pride. Tim for Tim from Rise Against. Did you ever see the concrete stairs on every day? The lunatic, the hypocrite, they're all lost in the fray. Can't see their lives are just like yours. And understone and undiscovered door leading to the gift of hope for you, eternity for you. The masses of humanity have always had to suffer. The businessman whose master plan controls the world each day is blind to indications on his species slow decay. Can't see their lives are just like yours. And unturned someone and undiscovered door needed to the gift of hope renewed, eternity for you. The masses of humanity have always had to suffer. People blow their minds, they choose to resign. This need for society is part of our design. They'll never go away, it's in the cards that way.
door leading to the gift of hope renewed. Eternity for you. The masses of humanity still clinging to their dignity. Masses of humanity have always had to suffer. Always had to suffer. Yeah. Thank you.
The first gig was, I don't know who threw it. Some kid threw a party in his dad's warehouse, and it was us and Social Distortion. And we only had 5 songs ever written. A couple of them didn't even make the EP, actually, so that was prior to that, really early stuff. We played our 5 or 6 songs.
One of the first shows he did was out in the valley at the Country Club in Reseda.
We used to follow him to Godzilla's, I mean, the warehouses, all kinds of places.
I remember my buddy Tom came up to me and said, hey man, you guys are really good, just don't break up and you'll get popular. So that's actually the advice I give to younger bands nowadays, because that was good advice. Back then, if you were a punk band, you had to have a logo. So Black Flag, to me, has the best punk logo ever. And the Circle Jerks had the Skanker Man, and you know, everyone has a cool logo. So we needed to have a logo. So I went in my art room and I drew up the Bad Religion logo and I took it to practice.
And Brett came in with this piece of paper with that crossbuster thing on it and said, look at this. And we kind of all laughed and then said, yeah, that's easy to spray paint on a wall and unbelievably offensive. Cool. Let's just run with that.
People think there's so much hatred in our logo. Well, I don't know why people would jump to that conclusion.
It wasn't meant to be against Christians.
I know plenty of religious Christians who are not offended at all by it.
Bad Religion is in no way anti-Christ. Christ was probably the most progressive liberal in history.
When you see that crossbuster at my house, it just means Christianity is not practiced here.
You know, he was there to talk about, hey man, this is, you know, it's all about forgiveness, and it's all about the meek and the poor and the infirm and loving them and loving each other. And, you know, Christ's revolution was forgiveness.
First of all, what is that slash? Well, it's the international symbol for no or disallowed.
Bad Religion logo is just meant to say we detest religion. It's not meant to be anti-Christian at all.
It's not a hateful thing at all. It just means look elsewhere.
It didn't have some kind of intent. It was just offensive and cool.
To me, it does have meaning. That symbol does have meaning, and I think it's a good logo.
Since you've seen us last time, I've developed a few new tricks. And I've been going to stage school, learning some new stage maneuvers, you know, to build up my stage presence. So you might see me doing this a lot. That's one of the basic ones they taught me. It's called the balcony point, and we don't usually get to play in places with balconies, so tonight it's really working. How's it going in the cheap seats up there, anyway? Here's a song called Change of Ideas.
What's in the bottle brought, but the fields are washed away. And the bells in now stand when the coffins are laid. And the time will see ahead when the squares are overused. But we don't want to admit what it is we have to lose. Millennia are coming, the modern age is here. It sanctifies the future, but renders us with fear. So many theories, so many prophecies. What we do need is a change of ideas. When we are scared, we can hide in our reveries. But what we need is a change of ideas. Change of ideas, change of ideas. What we need now is a change of ideas.
Last summer during the Warped Tour, I did a lot of field work on American culture, and I learned that there was a new force in the universe that I had not hitherto henceforth known about. And apparently there's a new force in the universe called God's love.
Striking that mental apparition like a drunk on a vacant street. Silently beset by the hands of time, indelicate in its fury. An aberrant crack and skeleton deal to unrelenting gravity. What minds is proud for a helpless victim to succumb rapidly. Tell me where is the love in a God's creation? When there's no above, there's no justice, just a cause and a cure, and a body of suffering. It seems we all endure, and what I'm frightened of is that they call it God's law. Well, twisted torment, make believe there's a truth that we all submit. But leave my eyes, my brain complies to all that they interpret. So tell me where's the love in a girl's creation? When there's no above, there's no justice, just a cause of a cure, and a body of suffering. It seems we all endure, and what I'm frightened of is that they call it God's law. I know there's no reason for alarm, but who needs perspective when it comes to pain and harm? We can change our minds. There's a better prize. But first you've got to tell me where there's a love in a God's creation. When there's no above, there's no justice, just a cause and a cure, and a body of suffering. It seems we all endure, and what I'm frightened of is that they call it God's law. They call it God's law. My pain is God's law. It's only God's law. God's law. Can't you feel it? Can't see the promise of prosperity. It's overwhelming you and me. It afflicts us like a disease. Ubiquitous compared to we cling to you like crazy new and innocent. Unseen is best for all humanity. The spread of culture, the sword of progress, the vector of suffering, a worm accepted breeze. The power of ventilation, duty and vocation, the blood of the hybrid, it's just a recipe. Renewing our ancestry, the fight for lack of harmony. But fathers, they led the way, their victims are still here today. Now it's time to erase the story of our bogus fate. Our history as it's portrayed is just a recipe for hate. Say what? A recipe for hate. The spread of culture, the sword of progress, a vector of suffering, a warm accepted breeze. The power of ventilation, duty and vocation, the blood of the hybrid, it's just a recipe.
The first introduction to punk rock to me was in January of 1977. CBS ran a TV show in 1977 called 1976, The Year in Review, to which they dedicated the last 10 minutes to the Sex Pistols, basically mocking them and saying, look how gross these guys are, look at these idiots. And I was sold. I just went in hook, line, and sinker and said, that's for me. I'm gone. Bye.
I knew probably from about 9 years old I wanted to be a singer. Punk wasn't around when I was 9.
I think what got me into punk rock and inspired to be in a band was when I first started playing guitar, there was the bands that were popular were like Kiss and Aerosmith and Queen, and there's these huge stage productions, larger-than-life images, and I could not relate. I never thought I could be that.
You know, when your hero is Keith Emerson, you might as well just quit because you can never be a virtuoso like that, you know. But then you hear Johnny Ramone and you think, wow, you know, I can do that.
When I heard punk rock, it was the most heavy guitar-oriented rock I've ever heard, and it seemed accessible, like, yeah, I could do that.
It breaks down the barrier between the star and the fan. Right. You know, it's the great leveler.
Got me excited about the whole new genre of punk rock back then.
By the time I was 15, Rodney on the Rock had become my main focus every Sunday night at midnight, I think, or 10 o'clock. And those bands were so inspiring to me that, you know, I really felt like I was a part of something here in LA, even though I was too young to go hang out in Hollywood. There's another element, of course, that's just as important as the musical side, and that is the feeling like I just did not belong. The feeling that I was a complete outcast in Southern California culture.
I'm not sure why I wanted to be a punk rocker, but I always felt like I didn't belong, and punk rock kind of gave a voice to that for me.
And I was a real geek. I probably still am, but back then, man, I was a real nerdo. People in my junior high school were getting laid and smoking weed. I mean, they just looked at me in disgust. So it was partly the feeling of being a complete outcast.
I went to a high school in 1980 where the coolest kids were punk rockers. So I wanted to fit in, so I joined a team of outcasts. The formative years, your best friends discover this kind of music. And I guess I'd been at summer camp or something and came in late. Everybody's hair was funny. So I want a piece of that, I said. So I got some.
Everybody wants to dance in a playpen, but nobody wants to play in my garden. See those hippies on an angry line, but they don't get my meaning. I'm enchanted by the birdies and blossoms. I'm enamored by your lovers on the weekend. I like the 4th of July, when bombs start flashing. And I wish I had a shiny red top, people with a big brass bell would cheer me up, or maybe something bigger that could really go pop. Then I can make the garden stop. Come out to play, come out to play, and we'll pretend it's Christmas Day at my atomic. All my scientists are working on a deadline, so my psychologist is working day and night time. He knows what's best for me, but they don't know what to do with. And I'm glad I'm not Corbin John, cause I work all night, a jelly in a pot. At least he's gotta got it, when the burn a plot and a fight that will never stop. Come out to play, come out to play, and we'll pretend it's Christmas Day at my atomic. I hope there's nothing wrong out there. I'ma watch it from the room inside my room.
atomic
Fuck yeah!
Let's hear for Brooks on drums for that song.
The bands that influenced me back in the day, the ones that had the greatest impact on me were definitely number one, the Germs. Darby Crash and the Germs with Pat Smear and Don Bowles and Lorna. And their album GI was just transformative for me.
The biggest band that I think had any kind of influence on what we did was the Adolescents, because they were doing three-part harmonies. And they were the first band that we'd ever seen, like as a punk rock band, doing three-part harmonies.
Black Flag, maybe not musically, but attitude, the way they just dominated their space. You know, even with that whole different chain of singers, and of course, you know, Henry being from Washington, when he joined, we paid a lot more attention to it. I always admired their total domination of what they did. It was their show, their stage. They were frightening, which I still get a kick out of. I love having that aspect of it.
When it comes to influences, I always qualify it by saying I was influenced at a very young age, and having started in Bad Religion at the age of 15, much of Bad Religion's early history, I was still being influenced because that's a very influential age. So, but before the band really started, I was influenced by pop sounding, pop rock music that was not necessarily commercial. Stuff like Todd Rundgren and Utopia and things like that were very influential to me.
I love all kinds of music. I've always loved R&B from a very young age. I think my favorite group of all time is the Beatles, and this might be surprising to Bad Religion fans, but I guess I'd put the top rock groups of all time in order as the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Stones. I know I'm a weirdo. Most guys wouldn't put the Beach Boys second, but I still stand by that today. And I know there's not a punk band in the top three, but that's how it is for me.
The greatest musical love for me is still Elvis Costello. I think that the angry young man that he was, and now he's kind of a bitter middle-aged man, that's for me. It's fascinating to me because he sums up a lot of my feelings fairly quickly. So I've been pretty consistent with Elvis Costello through my life. Other things have come and gone, but he's certainly the one that I could name as the #1 influence musically, the one that fills the hole in my soul.
Together at last, brutally engaged in Mortal Kombat. 10 in 2010, 10 in 2010. What kind of God don't care, so just a thing. 10 billion people all suffering. To the night and into desire, we must defeat. Forget what you want, scratch what you need. 10 in 2010, 10 in 2010. Happy and content again up into you. 10 more years we'll think of a solution. It just won't appear one day. But 10 in 2010 we're well on our way. 10 in 2010, 10 in 2010. We'd like to do a number now that's dedicated to our favorite people in the world. And I'm talking about a song called You. There's a place where everyone can be happy. It's the most beautiful place in the whole fucking world. It's made of candy canes and planes and bright red choo-choo trains. The meanest little boys, most innocent little girls. And you know, I wish that I could go there. That's a road that I have not found. But I wish you the best of luck, dear. Drop a card or letter to my side of town. Cause there's no time for fuss and fighting, my friends. But baby, I'm amazed at that you could send. And you painted my entire world. But I don't have the turpentine to clear what you have soiled. And I won't forget it. There's a place where everyone can be right, even though you may determined to be opposed. Admitted squares, no qualifications. That's where everyone has been and where everybody goes. So please try not to be impatient. How we all hate standing in line. But when the farm is good enough, you'll be there without a thought. And each journey, my friends, it's a long fucking time. And there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friends. But baby, I'm amazed at that you could send. And you painted my entire world. But I don't have the turpentine to clear what you have soiled. And I won't forget it. The three most frightening words ever invented by any religion. Come join us. So you say you gotta know why the world goes around, and you can't find the truth in the things you found, and you're scared shitless cause evil abounds. Come join us. I can tell you right I'm far away to fit in, full of battered people with a hammer to tap. Family to kid you and call brethren. Come join us. All we wanna do is change your mind. All you need to do is close your eyes. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us. Don't you see all the trouble that most people are in, and that they just want you further out of the dance? But I swear to you, we're different from all of them. Come join us. I can tell you I'm looking for a way to live where truth is determined by consensus. Directives, come join us. All we wanna have is your small mind. Turn it into one of our own kind. You can go through life drifting alone, desperate, desolate on your own. But we're looking for a few more solid bonds. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us. That's something I'm through. The world hates us while we hate them too. But you're accepted, of course, if you come join us. Independence of a dinner revolutionary, intellectual brainstorm scholarly. If you're not one of them, you're already. So come join us. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us.
I first met the guys in the band when I was in the Circle Jerks about 1980 at this hot dog stand, Okie Dog, where all the punk rockers used to hang out. I think it was Greg came up to me and they said, hey, we're in this band from the Valley, here's our demo, check it out. And I said, okay, well, if I like it, we're gonna be on Rodney on the Rock radio show this weekend. We played over the air. So I listened to the tape and it was good, so we played over the air and kind of became friends with the guys.
I just remember early on just he would drive us around to parties. He was 2 years older, so he had the wheels, and he wasn't from the Valley. He knew all the real happening parties, the punk parties out here in the LA Basin.
I asked him to come in and play a solo on a song that I wrote called Part 3. He was in the Circle Jerks, and we were playing a lot of shows together, and I said, I have this idea for kind of dueling banjos in this song. I want you to kind of play lead guitar against Brett at the same time. And he came into the studio and recorded his solo, and he never left. He just stayed. It was like, I think he's in the band now.
Greg was by far the most social of any punk in LA in the early developing years of the punk scene.
I guess around 1990, when the Circle Jerks broke up for the first time, is when Bad Religion kind of like became my main band. I got kind of lucky as the Circle Jerks were doing this, Bad Religion was doing this. So I am blessed. Thank you.
Favorite part of being in a band is the process of writing the song and then recording it and hearing it come to life in the studio with a final mix. To this day, that's just, it blows me away, and that process is what it's all about for me.
You know, the songwriting process with Bad Religion it really hasn't evolved that much. Brett Gurewitz and Greg Graffin are the two main songwriters.
People think of Bad Religion as a great collaboration in songwriting, mostly by Brett and myself. Brett and I don't really sit in the same room and create songs. We are very studious and isolated when we write.
Everybody goes to their corners of the world and writes their stuff.
I write a batch of songs, Greg writes a batch of songs. We present them to the band.
They kind of have this healthy songwriting competition, and we're all just the benefactors of that.
All of my best songs have come when there's some intellectual puzzle I'm trying to solve.
I think we have 220-something songs, and they've really collaborated on maybe 3.
I don't know how this came about because we met totally by chance, but I think our songs sound really similar. But we don't consult each other when we're writing them at all. So, I don't know how that happened. I guess we just evolved similar styles over the years.
There have been songs that Brett and I have co-written. But even those, the idea would have originated with Brett or myself, and then the verses get rounded out or filled in by the other person, but they're both pertaining to that original point.
More today than it used to be is, me and Greg will have a little bit of interaction. Like I'll give him feedback on his songs, maybe help him come up with parts, and he'll do it on my songs. But it's still basically the same thing.
I'm not sure if I'm that good at writing popular songs in the sense of being radio-style friendly songs for Bad Religion. Most of the songs that are most famous for Bad Religion have come from Brett's brain. I think I can do that with melody. That might be my strongest gift, is that I can take words and create an uplifting pop melody. I'm not quite a cynic, but I do tend to see the darker side of things often. If you ask me just to write a real feel-good song, I don't know if I could do it. And yet, some of my songs, because I'm trying to solve this intellectual puzzle, maybe I solve it, and it results in a feel-good song.
Sometimes, especially with Brian Baker and Brooks Wackerman now, Brett will bring a song in or something and say, here's an idea, and just let everybody go on it, because it's funner that way, right? You get all these people just creating all this stuff, and sometimes songs come in and they go, no, this is exactly what I want you to play, because this is what I hear in my head.
My favorite thing about being in a band is contributing to the songs, being a part of the writing process and watching the evolution of a song. Even if I didn't write it, it's still exciting to be, in the process of trying to create something.
A lot of people ask, does the music or the lyrics come first? And I've had songs where it's been just a title, and then everything fell into place from the title. I've had times when I've had just a riff in my brain, a guitar riff, and I fit the words to that.
I just wanted to say for posterity that I write my own lyrics because I'm proud of them, and I think they're probably more important to the songwriting than the music, actually, in the case of Bad Religion songs.
So it goes on a song-by-song basis, I guess you'd say.
Hey brother Christian, with your high and mighty ear, your action speaks so loud I can't hear word you're saying. Hey sister, bleeding hard with all of your compassion. Your neighbor soon hurt but can't escape temptation. Hey man of science, with your perfect rules of measure, can you improve this waste when that together? Hey mother mercy, can your lights run through forever? Is your finger on the travel a treasure? But I wanna conquer the world, give all the idiots a brand new religion, but end up poverty, uncleanliness and toil, promote equality and all of my decisions with a quick wink of the eye, and the guy you must be joking. Hey brother diplomat with worldly aspirations, you see those children cry, you let them at the station. Hey righteous soldier, you've got rival obligations, and prisoners don't come to your public obligations. But I wanna conquer the world, give all the idiots a brand new religion, put end to poverty, uncleanliness and toil, promote equality and all of my decisions. I want to conquer the world, expose the culprits, beat up to the children, do away with their pollution, they'll sink the whales, we'll have peace on and a global communion. I wanna conquer the world, I want to conquer the world, I wanna conquer the world, I want to conquer the world. I can't believe it, the way you look sometimes, like a tram bomb light on a city street. Oh yeah, and I don't want it, the things you're offering me, civilized barcode, quick ID. Oh yeah, 'cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to live, but got a lot of toys. My daddy's a lazy middle class, intellectual. My mama's on Palladium, so ineffectual. Ain't life a mystery? I can't explain it, the things you're saying to me. It's going yeah, 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 oh yeah. 'Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to read, but I got a lot of toys. My daddy's a lazy middle class intellectual. My mama's on Palladium, so ineffectual. Ain't life a mystery? Tried to tell you about no control. What now? I don't give a fuck. But then you told me how bad you had to suffer. Is this really all you had to offer? 'Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to live, but I got a lot of toys. My daddy's a lazy middle class intellectual. My mama's on Palladium, so ineffectual. Cat, foot, iron claw, neurofucking surgeon screams for more. Innocence rates when they bomb fire. Everything I want, I really need. Revolution, yeah. Anyway, without further ado, everybody, we'd like to present to you now the Generator. Like a rock, like a planet, like a bucket and a bomb. I'm made up, printed by the joy and the madness. I encounter everywhere I turn. I've seen it all along. In books and magazines, like a twit before dying, like a photographic scene. There's a fire behind the window. There's an ugly laughing bear, like a hummingbird inside, like a blood on my door. It's a generator. I'm on it all along, right about under my skin, like gutters in a photograph, like paper in the wind. There's a hammer by the window, there's a knife on the floor, like turbines in darkness, like the blood on my door. It's a generator. Like a rock.
The way the band ended up on Atlantic was this, and it's kind of ironic because, you know, we were a punk band on an indie that was doing well. Epitaph was doing great. Bad Religion was doing great. So a lot of people wonder, you know, why the hell would they leave and go to Atlantic?
The move to Atlantic kind of, it fell under that umbrella of Bad Religion and Epitaph kind of outgrowing each other and smothering each other.
I didn't know at that time that Brett's work at Epitaph was on the verge of being so successful.
There was a thought that Brett and I said, like, well, you know, if we could get Bad Religion off of Epitaph, it would take away a lot of the workload at Epitaph, and we could kind of focus on other bands. And I agreed with that and thought, you know, it's something we should look into. Not seriously. We were like, well, let's just go see what we're worth out in the market.
An A&R guy at Atlantic, an old friend of ours, used to write for a fanzine, says, hey man, you know, you should sign to Atlantic, it's cool here, I'll be your A&R guy, we know each other. You know, on a punk label, you can only ever sell, you know, what you're doing, which is great, but you know, don't you want to be even bigger? Don't you want everyone to have a chance to be exposed to your music? And everyone in the band, including myself, thought, yeah, that would be a good opportunity, and you know, maybe an indie label can't, in this day and age, you know, reach the mass market.
we ran into Danny Goldberg, who is a great guy. He was Nirvana's manager and Bonnie Raitt's manager and a straight up guy. And he really did understand what we were trying to accomplish. And all of a sudden it was, well, here's a legitimate contender who would actually be in our corner.
So it sounded like a good idea. And we went through with it. And something like 2 weeks later, the Offspring's song Come Out and Play got on the radio, and that record just went through the roof. And went platinum and went beyond. You know, it sold something like 5 million in the US now. Proving that a punk band can do it on an indie label. By then, Bad Religion had signed to Atlantic, and Offspring and Rancid were on Epitaph, becoming superstars. And I would have liked for my band to have been on Epitaph, becoming a superstar too.
You know, people do need to understand why all these things happened. It's like until you're like in a band and working at the label and saying we got to get balance here, it wasn't going to make any sense.
The truth is that if it had been slightly different timing, I don't think Bad Religion ever would have gone to Atlantic.
We went to Atlantic amidst a very difficult time in terms of band communication. So it wasn't such a glorious decision, such a great feeling to put out a record on a major label.
I think the naivete on my part about going to a major label was the turnover rate for employees and executives there is insane. Like every 3 months, it's like you get a whole new crew.
Through no fault of Atlantic Records, no fault of Epitaph, so many cultural factors conspired at that moment to make it an inauspicious move that we just sort of trotted along and, you know, didn't realize the direction we were headed.
I don't know if you know this, but you know, a lot of guys in big rock bands take along a personal bodyguard or a technical assistant or, well, not this guy. And it's not only because I'm not in a big rock band, it's because I'm old-fashioned. That's right. I still use a cord on my microphone, and that means sometimes I gotta switch mics. We still use our own towels and our old-fashioned, hey wait, you don't have a cord on your bass, you. Anyway, I am privileged to be able to show you something that I've developed over the years. It's a special technique in changing microphones. And if you'll indulge me, I'd rather do it here in front of stage and go back there and do it. All right. Brooks, do your little thing. This really adds a little to the tension. Can we get some more light on? Can we get some light on this subject? I could never do that. Eat your heart out, Metallica.
There's people out there that say I'm not good, 'cause I don't believe in things that I should. But when the final gun becomes, I'll be so sorry. I'd run and hope and pray that God won't think I'm good. Countries manufacture bombs and guns to kill your brother for something that he hasn't even done. Smuggers who wanted my lungs, they're not sorry, they're wrong, they hide behind their eyes, are helping everyone. In the end, good will go to heaven up above, the bad will perish in the depths of hell. How could hell be any worse? Hollywood's a fucking curse. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. Can't you see it? Fuck Armageddon, it's hell. Fight! Dogma! We're living in the denouement. All the battles, grabbing eyes, and want to use some fingers and spy them all. You tell me, how could hell be any worse? Life alone's a fucking curse. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. Can you see it? Fuck Armageddon, it's hell, it's hell, it's hell, 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 hell. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. Fuck Armageddon, this is hell. This is hell. Everybody's talking about it when it comes to delivery bound. But you're some kind of channel, it just doesn't reason. I saw it dance the other night as stately as a slot machine. That shook my wisdom and some came over me. Anesthesia, a Mona Lisa. I got a little but here comes oblivion. Never loved you, how did you find me? The console never put complexity down. And all good children go to heaven. I made me hope he's out of this time when I had a bit of time to come. But a crazy old man came up too late, he caught a chain reaction. I'm gonna hang on here for 11 on here, little just must one account is gone. But looking at you now is driving me to distraction. Anesthesia, a Mona Lisa. I got a little but here comes oblivion. Never loved you, how did you find me? The comes will never put complexity down. And all good children go to heaven.
Nirvana came along and just blew all the doors open for everybody. Next up is Green Day and The Offspring and all that. And so everyone's thinking the same thing for us.
I had just put out a record by The Offspring that was just selling millions of records. And Epitaph was a tiny indie at the time. It was me and 5 other people.
Brett and I were working at Epitaph, so Epitaph's growing through the roof. It's just, you know, every band is starting to sell big numbers, and punk rock is now huge.
Everything was getting so intense that there was no way in the world I was going to be able to do Bad Religion and Epitaph at the same time.
Bad Religion is taking up all of our time. It used to just be more of a 3-month-a-year kind of hobby-ish thing, and now Greg says, I'm not going to go back to school. I want to tour more with the band and spend more time dedicated to the band. But that's not going to work at Epitaph with Brett because he needs to spend more time with the label.
There's no way that I could just abandon Epitaph at this moment because it was just exploding at the seams.
And I'm kind of torn between the middle saying, well, okay, I'm either going to answer phones or I'm going to play the bass guitar. I'm playing the bass guitar.
I thought the lesser of 2 evils was to leave Bad Religion because I thought they would be able to go on without me. And it turned out, of course, they were able to.
Brett made the right decision because he had to take care of his company. I really believe that. And when he left, it was huge. And I called Greg and I said, you know, Brett's leaving.
When Brett left the band, it was a frightening moment. I wasn't able to really understand the impact that it was going to have. I believed that somehow we could overcome the drawbacks of losing Brett by maybe elevating our commercial publicity and just trying to paint a lighter picture of the band and where it came from, as opposed to the real substance of the band, which is its songwriting. In a sense, I really believed all these things could overcome the shortcomings of losing Brett. Plus, I was pissed that he left. I mean, plain and simple, there was just you know, it's like, if someone just says, I'm bailing, and you're a partnership, you get angry. I never acted out the anger towards Brett, because I thought that would be juvenile and futile. He made a decision, and I had to live with it. Some of my anger I put into just moving forward with the band, maybe it's what saved the band. I tried to make the band just as good without him. Well, that didn't happen, but in a sense, the band bridged a very treacherous gap, and that is the gap of Brett's absence. And we wouldn't have bridged that gap, I don't think, if I didn't have that drive. So wherever it came from, it ended up being a good thing. We had varying degrees of success through those years. Overall, those were the kind of the dark ages of Bad Religion.
In '93, about a year before I joined, I was dating a woman who worked at Epitaph. It was '92. And I got a pre-release of the Recipe for Hate cassette. And this cassette just changed my life. It was literally stuck in the tape deck of my car, couldn't come out. And I listened to it constantly and said, you know, if I had made better choices musically in my life, I could be in a band that good. Because I was friends with this lady at Epitaph, I had occasion to hang out with Brett and Greg Hetson. Well, when I was with Greg Hetson, I would always say, you know, if Brett ever leaves, call me first. The next day, I would say the same thing to Brett. If you ever get rid of Hetson, give me a call. I mean, I was just trying to cover all the bases, but it was just fantasy land because no one was going anywhere until I got a phone call in 1994 from Greg Hetson saying, do you want to be in the band because Brett left? And it was unbelievable. And I said yes immediately because it was something I wanted to be part of so badly.
We knew that if Brett leaving was a big blow to the band, so we had to replace him with someone of very high status. And Brian was a friend of the band's, so we thought, well, can't hurt to ask. And he was living in LA, and he was excited. So, we got along great, and he was a perfect replacement.
I think getting Brian was probably the right choice because Brian came in with his own credentials. It wasn't like trying to get a Brett alike. let's get someone like Brett. I was like, no, we just got this other guy who came in from the East Coast and had his own history. Because you can't really replace a songwriter like Brett. That's just not something you can do. And I think that's something that we've always kind of thought about, is if somebody leaves, it's an opportunity to go and find the best person you can find, like Brooks Wackerman, right? When he came into the band, it's like, okay, I've never even seen anybody like you. You're insane.
How I joined Bad Religion was through mutual friends in the industry, and after I quit my old band, about 4 or 5 people recommended me to Brett Gurewitz. So he called me up, gave me a list of songs to learn, and I went down there and auditioned, and felt natural. So here I am at the Palladium.
He is the sickest drummer I've ever played with. He's just a mad, gifted musician.
I come from a very musical family. My dad's a music teacher, so as soon as I started walking, he put me on the drum throne and started teaching me beats and rudiments.
I love the fact that Brooks is very interested in learning, and I think, you know, we get along so well because our parents are all educators.
When I was about 6 years old, he took me to the teachers that he took from, a jazz teacher and a classical teacher, so I took lessons for about 7 years.
As he's been in the band longer, and we've kind of all started to realize we're all relatively decent people, he's really become an unbelievably great guy. And I really like him.
Brooks, very dry sense of humor. Very, very funny guy. I just hate when drummers always have to warm up on their little practice pads. Very annoying.
Brooks is the best drummer I've ever played with, and he is a genuinely thoughtful and gentle guy. He has the most complete lack of pretension and hostility from a native Californian that I've ever seen.
I really don't hate anything about Brooks. Is it possible I might not ever come upon something I hate about him? Just watch it. I'm watching you, Brooks.
Thank you. This is a song called Cease.
Blacktop pavement, cover me like a chemical reaction or a steamroller. Very randomly, there's a distant buzz and low frequency. It tickles my ear, rumbles under my feet, and it shakes the leaves off of every tree. Violently, what pretension, everlasting peace. Everything must cease. Institution on the hill, like a beacon in the mind of an ancestor, to ignite a people's will. There's a shadowed stain on the west facade. It is spread like decay to enshroud the fraud, and the descendants find it oh so odd, oh so odd. What pretension, everlasting peace. Everything must cease. Grave memorial, hewn white stone, like the comforting caress of a mother or a friend you've always known. It evokes such pain and significance. What was once is reduced to remembrance, and the generations pass without recompense. Oh, what pretension, everlasting peace. Everything must cease. Cease. Thank you. Thank you very much.
On an individual level, I know that music has the power to change lives because it's changed my life.
You know, I've had people come up to me and say, hey man, you know, that 7-inch you did with Noam Chomsky back in blah de blah really changed the way I think about the world, and you know, really influenced me to you know, be involved politically.
I don't really know if, you know, in the break room at the House of Representatives, if they all sit around and listen to The Empire Strikes First and go, you know what, maybe our system is flawed. I don't really know if it has that kind of far-reaching power, but as improving the quality of one's life, I can't think of anything better.
I don't think music or any band could changes the world. It enlightens people, it gives people ideas, thought, but I don't think anybody's changed the world globally or in a big way just through music, unfortunately.
On a global level, I would say that's not very accurate, because music, as we know it, only affects a small fraction of the population. Even if it's a highly influential fraction, it's still a very small fraction. There's a world out there that exists independent of music, and it's going to go on existing independent of music.
When people talk about music making a difference, I always assume that they talk about some kind of John Lennon feed the world aspect of making a difference. I'm not sure if it can change a cultural psyche for the better. I don't think so. I think human beings in general are pretty evil. And so they'll always gravitate towards the negativity that they can reach for, whether it's fear of terror or Marilyn Manson. They're going to blame somebody.
It delights and angers. It's, God, it's just such a big thing. You know, I'm a musician, you know. I don't go an hour without listening to music. And I know that most of my friends are the same way. So, you know, I certainly hope that it's as motivational for others as it is for me.
Yeah, music changes people, and I take that very seriously in songwriting and performance. And I believe I go with that a priori, that preconceived belief that what I'm doing is going to affect people's lives.
Music is a force for social change, and even if sometimes these days it seems hopeless, I don't think any of us should give up hope, and we have to keep trying.
Los people! I don't need to be a global citizen, but some must by nationality. I'm a member of a growing populace. We impose our popularity. There are ability to pull us under and there are things that drag us down. But there's a power, a fight of Britain that's lurking all around. We've got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, he helped build the president's estate. I preside for the Earth's population, cause some few live in the USA. At least the foreigners can copy our morality. They can visit but they cannot stay. Only prisons we can go to the prosperity. Makes us always greener confidence. We got a place to go and we die, and the architect resides right here. Sing it out. We've got the American Jesus, of the reign national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Every day. These are bombers wearing fields, the folks the army wheels, expressions on the faces, the star, millions of power of a man. The few that drives the clan is a motive and the conscience of the murder. The preacher on TV, false sincerity, formatted and restricted by the big computer, the nuclear bomb, the kids are no mouth, I'm fearful that he's inside me. Yeah, we've got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, make the Zionist authority. We've got the American Jesus, of the reign national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Say it out, my fellow Americans. Say it out, one nation.
just want to say it has been my pleasure and privilege to play with the best players in punk rock now. Brian Baker, Jay Bentley, Brooks Wackerman, Greg Hetson, and of course my partner Brett Gurwitz. But the great privilege of all, of course, is being able to play for you guys for so long. And thank you so much for coming. And thanks. Hope we'll see you next time along the way. I refuse to abuse what is kind to the views, but it's there and it's happening to me along the way. As we go through the snow, we cannot forget bones, but dinner's always waiting at the table along the way. What you see, not for me, isn't what you plan to be, but you'll have what you wanted in the end along the way. And we'll cry as we try, our brothers pass us by. Be strong through the ages of our tears along the way. Now we grow as we show that the morals we must know be shapen and mistaken by the miles along the way. But regret, don't forget to find love and happiness, unless you're willing to be strong when they're not along the way. Like Tommy, you are free, you will not follow me, but we'll see each other once we're on the path along the way.
I'm not a very good commentator on the legacy of Bad Religion, only because I've distanced myself from the punk culture.
We took a sound from a small scene, right? A small local scene, and through Epitaph, we kind of brought it to the world and popularized it. We didn't invent it.
Minor Threat really did invent a certain that certain tempo, which we stole from the Bad Brains, but just refined it a little bit, or just messed with it a little bit. That whole hardcore thing, I think Minor Threat is one of the bands that would be identified as the beginning of that, and I'm very proud of it. The only downside of the Minor Threat is when straight edge went tragically wrong and turned into, you know, marauding gangs of vegans smacking drinks out of people's hands, which was never the intention. I mean, it was just one of our songs that preached sane personal politics, but it was never supposed to be some sort of, you know, youth movement in any way, shape, or form. Bad Religion, that legacy will be join the best band you can find and don't quit. That one's easy.
As I've gotten older, I always have to justify why I'm going up on stage each night. To me, it's because I'm not a peer to these people. I'm not their peer anymore. Right. I'm not someone who relates to them on their own terms. I think I relate to them because I symbolize something to them. And I hope it's something uplifting and hopeful.
The legacy of Bad Religion will probably, it'll be twofold. It would probably be fairly intertwined with Epitaph Records. And it would probably hinge a lot on our catalog. That, you know, we have 15 albums out and 25 years as a band. That's a long time for any kind of music, especially this.
You know, through punk music, the world has become alive to me. I've learned more about the world because of the punk ethic that I grew up with. I hope that same ethic can do the same for the audience.
A lot of my friends who are in bands who are just, you know, huge and have become superstars have told me that, you know, my band was important to them and was, you know, influenced them in coming up. So I guess we do have some kind of an influence.
I know people talk about us as being influential. And I understand that. I can't really allow myself to think like that because it skews your head. And you start thinking that you're doing something important, and the minute you think that, you're dead. Because you're no longer thinking that what you're doing is for you and fun.
I've gone more introverted as I've gotten older to try to make sense of the planet, make sense of our culture, make sense of our place in nature, and try and distill that in a communicable form for our audience. And so, in a way, I think that has helped Bad Religion not become stale, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is that I've become less able to comment on what's going on in the punk world. What I see in the future of Bad Religion is great hope, personal hope, that we will play fewer shows per week on tour than we are currently playing.
We never really plan more than a year ahead because no one knows what's going to happen. Of course, at this point, someone could die of old age.
The ongoing joke is 5 more years, and we've been saying that for 20 years.
I think we have a couple of good records left in us.
I'm excited about writing another album. We're doing it sort of one album at a time.
We're working on a double album right now.
We've always taken it really one album at a time, never really set goals, just try to write consistently good material and go with it that way.
As long as Brett and I feel inspired to write, I think we're going to come up with good albums.
What I see in the future for Bad Religion is hopefully 10 more records.
It really revolves around the idea that this is a hobby. It's become our job, which is rare, but it is still a hobby, and it's something that you have to be passionate about, and you really have to like it. You can't do it if you don't like it, because then it's a job, and you're not sincere.
Most of my friends work for a living doing things that they don't like to do, and I just feel so fortunate that what I do is something that I would do for free, something that I've done my entire life. It's a privilege, and you know, it's just people don't get to do this, and I'm well aware of how rare that is, and you know, if you'll excuse the reference to a deity, I feel blessed.
I just hope that Bad Religion can continue to be a source for my creative output. And that's all I've ever looked at it as since I was a kid.
Hey, do what you want, but don't do it around me. Idleness and dissipation breed apathy. I sit on my ass a goddamn day. I'm missing the mechanical boy with nothing to say. What you must do all you can. Break all the funny rules and go to hell with Superman and die like a champion. Yeah, hey. Yeah, I don't know if the billions will survive, but I believe in God when one and one are five. My moniker is mad, and I'm rising to the core. I tear down the building just to pass through the door. So do what you must, do all you can. Break all the funny rules and go to hell with Superman and die like a champion. Yeah, hey! Yeah, hey! Every man walked away as Spider-Man to control. The mind they weren't the same, to conquer was his goal. And he built his great empire, he slaughtered his own kind. They died a confused man, killed himself in his own mind. Early man walked away as Spider-Man took control. The minds weren't all the same. To conquer was his goal. Then he built his great empire, and he slaughtered his own kind. Then he died a confused man, killed himself with his own mind. was his goal. And he built his great empire, he slaughtered his own kind. The dying confused man killed himself with his own mind. But why you die from our own arrogance? Why you die from our own arrogance? Oh, you die from our own arrogance. Why you die from our own arrogance? Now, some people, sing along with us. Father, can you hear me? How have I let you down? I curse the day that I was born, and all the sorrow in this world. Let me take you to the hurting ground, where all good men are trampled down, just to settle a bet that could not be won between a prideful father and his son. Will you guide me now, for I can't see a reason for the suffering and this long misery. What if every living soul could be upright and strong? Well, then I do imagine there will be and there will be and there will be sorrow no more. When all soldiers lay their weapons down, or when all kings and all queens relinquish their crowns, or when the only true Messiah rescues us from ourselves, it's easy to imagine there will be and there will be and there will be sorrow no more, no more. Thank you all so much for coming. We will see you next time. Maybe tomorrow night we'll be back here on the same stage. Thank you so much, and be careful going home. Bye-bye. As I walk beneath the valley, I shall fear no evil. 'Cause thanks to King George and his evil cabinet, today murder is legal. God, I know that it's wrong to kill my blood for what he hasn't done. And as a place like in the sky, it sounds like heaven is falling. It sounds like heaven is falling. You promised me a new day of dawn. See 1,000 points of light, like so many points of hatred, shame and horror.
Nothing like dry clothes after a show for a wet stud like myself.
Los Angeles is burning, the world is burning.
Yes. 4 years old, rice bear. For the ahead metal detector.
People don't eat this.
This is much better than this is. Palladium's been the best band of all time, better than the Beatles.
Sometimes I think I would have, if I could have changed one thing, I think I would have stayed and played on Into the Unknown.
Maybe I would have put out a killer punk record instead of Into the Unknown. Maybe that would have elevated Bad Religion's status at the time.
I'm pretty proud of my work with Bad Religion, and granted I've been in the band for only 3.5 years, but it's definitely, you know, expanded my horizons as a musician. If anything, maybe a hairstyle would change.
Can I modify my DNA to have better hair?
I'm somebody who does not live with regrets. I feel like if you analyze the past too much, you become obsessed with the past. I can't change the past, and I can't really change the future.
I would probably not wait till like my late 20s to start taking guitar lessons.
I wouldn't change anything. Not a single thing.
At the risk of sounding arrogant, I feel the past speaks for itself.
I wouldn't trade anything that happened at all when the band is over and we all look back at it and say, like, that was the majority of my life. That was what I did with my life. And I'm totally okay with that.
Where's my makeup? Where's my scarf? I told you.
I'm definitely grateful for the success we've had so far, and I never expected us to ever get this far in the first place.
Most importantly, if you join Bad Religion, don't leave. Just don't.
I kind of have a strong belief that everything happens for a reason. And if everything hadn't happened the way it did, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. And I love sitting here and talking to you right now. I want to be doing this. So wanting what I have is a direct result of everything that we've gone through. I wouldn't change a thing.